my Scaredy Cats. My name is Kate from Scaredy Cat Gaming, and we are in a game called I Saw Him Today. Now, fair warning about this game, it mentions suicide and suicidal tendencies, so if you don't like that stuff in a game or whatever, or if, like, you get triggered by it, do not watch this video. Okay, so this is a game that was made entirely solo and under 48 hours. There wasn't really a description other than that it says sometimes you come face to face with ghosts from your past. So other than that, I don't really know what this game is about. Let's get into this. I saw him today. He has longer, messier hair now. He's wearing casual street clothes. They don't look completely new, but they're definitely not old and worn. There's a look of boredness on his face. He doesn't want to be on the subway much longer. He's glued to his phone, absent-mindedly flicking through apps, notifications, something. Is he talking to someone? Who? The subway comes to a halt as we reach the next station, where people pile on. He doesn't look my direction. I'm thankful. I wouldn't know what to say. Instead, I just stand there with my mouth hanging open, staring at him like a stalker. It's been years. A few long, long years since I last saw him. We were best friends in elementary school. He was like an older brother to me, even though he was only a few months older. He was the type of friend who had an extra toothbrush and blankets for me at his house, and the same for him at mine. It sounds almost cliched, but we really would spend almost every day together. I didn't have many friends, being the new kid in school. But when I arrived, he welcomed me with open arms. We lived only a couple of blocks from each other. It was perfect. When it was hot, we'd watch TV and play video games. When it was cold, when it was cool, we'd ride our bikes to the park. It was simple back then. Things started getting more complicated towards the end of middle school. We only had a couple classes together then. We would eat lunch together when we could, but more and more often he would go straight home. Sometimes he had homework. Sometimes he had a cold. Sometimes he just wanted to go home alone. I was in middle school. I didn't have to deal with bills or work hours or doctor visits, but I did have to worry about him. We would go a couple weeks at times without saying much to each other, and then he'd spring back one day and act like we were inseparable. I'd be late for class some days just trying to talk to him for a bit longer, but he was usually uninterested. He would test me, trying to see how long I could go before crawling back. Why is this text red? It worried me. Had I done something wrong? Had I made him mad? Had I insulted him? Had I pushed him away? Of course I haven't. As my anxiety increased over the following months, I tried even harder to spend time with him. If he went home alone, I would go over later to see if he wanted to hang out. If he had a later lunch, I would be late going back to class and sit with him. It was always me trying to make more time with him, not the other way around. I would try to show him stuff to impress him, to show him I was worth being a friend to, like my good grades or awards or just anything. He used to love showing me his accomplishments, but he always turned his head and would go back to ignoring me. This is how life went on for the rest of middle school and into high school. We would be inseparable one month and distant the next. Every time I always thought it was my fault. Every single time. We came to another stop. Some people get off the subway, some people get on. He doesn't move. I don't know what stop he's waiting for. My own stop is only a few more ahead, but I'm not sure if I'll be getting off on that stop. It looks like he hasn't changed a bit. Physically, yes. He's now an inch or two taller than me. The tips of his hair are dyed, but his roots are showing. The little acne he had in high school is gone, but mentally, I don't think he could ever change. Halfway through high school, I had to move. Dad found a better paying job a few hours away and in a place cheaper to live. It was a natural move. I wasn't worried about the new school or the move or the lack of friends. I was worried about him. How was he going to take it? Would I lose contact with him? Would we be able to stay friends? I almost made myself sick waiting for the right time to tell him. I invited him over to stay the night. We played video games and procrastinated doing homework and then ate dinner. Afterwards, I told him, "What about me?" My parents said it was a natural response. He's still a kid after all. Of course he'd think about himself first. And I believed them, mostly. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to leave him behind. I didn't want to feel guilty about leaving him behind. I felt that summer. I left that summer in the dead, dry heat. He didn't come back over. I texted him at least 100 times before I left, just trying to talk to him, even for a bit. Sometimes he'd respond with a short answer, sometimes he wouldn't respond at all. In hindsight, the move saved me a lot of stress. I was so busy packing and unpacking and getting ready for my new school that I didn't have time to worry about him not answering. It was in the back of my mind, sure, but I was so busy that I was able to convince myself that he'd respond eventually. And naturally he did, a couple times. Sorry, I kind of have a little bit of a sore throat. He texted me first a few times. Nothing major, just some small talk. Just enough for him to stay relevant. Going to another school in the middle of high school wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, at least for me. I tried out for the basketball team and made the cut. I quickly made a new set of friends, more than I had at my old school. I even went to homecoming with some new friends, something I never would have done before. I was happy. I was moving on. He couldn't have that. We reached another stop. Downtown is up ahead, so more people pile on. The tracks screech and the subway lurches forward as we continue on. Should I get off on his stop? Should I approach him? What would I say to him? Thanks for trying to ruin my life? Maybe it'd be better to let him go. I don't like remembering that year. The year he died. I was situated into school nicely. I was starting my second semester there, so it was winter. It was a colder, drearier winter than I was used to back at my old school. It snowed every week, sometimes I wasn't used to. The first time it snowed there, which was about 2 feet, I sent a picture to him. We rarely talked anymore, but I was fine with that. I innocently thought that we were still good friends, and one day we started talking again like normal. That's when I got the text. He's dead. It was a long-winded text from a friend at the old school. He had overdosed trying to kill himself. He was in a coma. He was going to die. And it was my fault. I got another text from a different acquaintance a couple hours later. He was in the hospital on life support. He didn't know how he got there, but he was in bad shape. And it was my fault. Over the course of the night and the next few days, it seemed like the whole school found my social media and or phone number and were messaging me. He cut himself trying to off himself. He drove his truck into a tree on purpose. He jumped off a bridge because he didn't want to live anymore. The details were all jumbled up. It was hard to tell what was real and what people had made up when they heard the word suicide attempt. But one fact remained. He was in the hospital and badly hurt. The ringing never stopped. Every time I went online or looked at my phone, I had another notification. Everyone wanted to know why. What happened to make him do that? What was he thinking? Why had I pushed him to it? I didn't know why. I never could have realized why. The assumption was that he had always been depressed, and me moving away and ignoring him had been too much. I believed it. I fully, truly, absolutely believed it. It was my fault. Who else could it have been? I had never known what depression really was until then. It was by far the lowest point of my life. The months following, I ran myself ragged with guilt. I felt worthless. He was released from the hospital soon after being admitted. I don't know how long he spent there. Everyone told me different times. Some say he woke up a few hours after arriving and was released the next day. Others say he spent weeks in care. Whenever he was asked why, he said the same sob story. He left me. He hurt me. Of course, that's not what it was at all. I was young and naive. At first glance, he was just a selfish, depressed kid. But as I grew older, I realized the truth. He was a user. He thrived off the attention and people giving it to him, but he went about getting it in an abusive, manipulative way. He was always seeing how far I could go before I needed him again, how long I could go after being ignored by him. He never cared about what I could do. He only wanted me to be impressed by what he could do. And when he found out he was losing his grip on me, that I could live fine without going back to him, he made sure I would call back. I can't imagine what kind of state of mind he was in, to fully believe hurting himself that much was worth it. When I look back at it all, I realize how perfect a target I was. I was the new kid at school, and I was so young, so impressionable. I had a hard time fitting in and making friends. That's where he came in. He helped me through it, helped show me around, helped me get used to this new place. At that time, I really liked to think that he didn't have any ill intentions, that he was just a kid and saw another kid struggling and wanted to help. But he got a taste of being the center of attention and wouldn't let it go. We reached the last stop before downtown. A couple people in the back get off, but more people get on. My heart jolts when I think he might be getting off at this stop, but it settles back down when I see he's just shifting his weight. There's too many people in here. There's not enough space for us all. I can barely see him now. I don't want to get closer. Not yet. I still can't decide what to do. I grab my phone and contemplate messaging someone. The person who helped me through it. It was a couple months after his attempt. I was sitting there at home, tired from another day at school, another day seeing more notifications. At first I was just answering them, replying back, explaining myself, saying how sorry I was, how I hoped he would forgive me and to pass it on. But after a while I just deleted them, reading them to get the icon away, trying to forget about them. Some of them seemed to think I really was the problem. Some of them just wanted to hear my side. They all started to blur together as the weeks went on, except for one. Her post felt different. She was an acquaintance from that school. I had spoken to her a few times before, but she was more a friend of his than of mine. She wanted to know more about what had happened, and said she was a friend of his. But she also asked how I was doing, if I was okay. I was tired, so I thought it would go like the rest of the conversations. Wow, that sucks, or you two should talk it out, or I'm sorry about that. But it didn't. After I explained it to her, I could imagine her almost laughing, not at me, but more as a confirmation. That sounds just like him. She took over talking and started telling me about what she'd seen and how he'd tried to pull the same thing on her. He loved being the center of attention, but he couldn't do much. Rather than try out for different sports teams or clubs, he kept to his small group of friends and wanted praise for nothing. For her, there was less of an escape, but it was also easier to deal with him. She just talked to him every so often and acted like she cared. We stayed up the rest of the night, just talking, making each other laugh by sharing stories. I told her about the time when we got lost in the woods and the sun was starting to set. It had been scary at the time, but it was funny now. I'm studying to be a doctor now, but I still maintain that that night where I laughed longer than I had in months was more cathartic than a lot of medicine out there. The subway slows down as we approach downtown. Almost everyone on board gets ready to disembark. He looks towards the doors. This is his stop. It's been years. If I let him go, will I ever see him again? Will I ever want to see him again? Will I be able to walk away, guilt-free? Will I be laying awake tonight, angry that I didn't stop him? What could I say to him? What would I want to say to him? The door's open. Okay, so that was I Saw Him Today. I thought that this would have been more of like an interactive game, but it wasn't. It was more of just a storytelling game. And that's pretty cool because this game was only made in 48 hours. So I actually like this. It tells the side of the story of like how it feels to have to go through something like that. And it makes you wonder, because some people have friends like that where they just move away and they don't talk to them anymore, and then they see them and they think in their head, should I talk to them? Should I say something to them? But they don't think they should. Alright, well, I'm going to end this episode here. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, hit that like button, and if you'd like to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, I'll put the links in the description below. Until next time, my scaredy cats, bye-bye!